Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending. My name is Johnny Hall, and I am a volunteer with the Indianapolis Liberation Center, a registered 501c4 social welfare organization. Our center is the home to various groups that support our city's marginalized and oppressed. And today we're hosting a press conference organized by the Coalition to Free Vernon T. Bateman, a growing group of academics, researchers, artists, lawyers, and others committed to exonerating Vernon T. Bateman, who was falsely convicted of rape in 1998 and spent over 26 years in prison. Even today, Vernon still lives under severe and inequitable parole stipulations that, as Congressman Andre D. Carson wrote in a November 2024 letter supporting a clemency review, quote, limit his ability to work and make positive contributions to our community, end quote. While incarcerated, Vernon illustrated, wrote, and published 5 children's books. Since his release, he has donated beautiful artworks to our city, including several mural installations on Mass Avenue. His advocacy extends across the world, and he reaches international audiences through his children's books. Just last month, they found a special place in classrooms in Japan. At one Tokyo elementary middle school, they are used as part of English language instruction. While we are anxious to address the many miscarriages of justice that took away so much of this man's life, today's conference is focused on a particularly urgent matter. Marion Circuit Court case number 49C01-2407-JP-006771, quote, in the matter of the Paternity of Promise N scales, end quote. Genetic testing has confirmed the child in this matter is the offspring of Dorothy N. Scales and Vernon T. Bateman. This Thursday, February 13 at 9 a.m., Vernon is scheduled to appear in Judge Brent D. Wilson's court on the hearing on petition to establish paternity. The Coalition to Free Vernon T. Bateman is, among other immediate demands, calling on the Marion County Prosecutor's Office to immediately vacate this case for reasons we will hear shortly. As we continue this press conference, we urge you to engage with the materials provided, to listen closely to the narrative and facts shared, and to recognize the urgency of this issue. Press materials containing further details, statistics, and contact information are available for those who wish to follow up. For further inquiries, please reach out to our speaker, Dr. Derek R. Ford, at his contact information listed in the press packet. As I've stated today, we will hear from one of the Coalition's lead organizers, Dr. Derek R. Ford. Dr. Ford is Associate Professor and Chair of Education Studies and Coordinator of the Peace and Conflict Studies at DePaul University. Ford serves as Associate Editor of Post-Digital Science and Education and the Journal for Critical Education Policy Studies. He has published over 50 scholarly articles and 8 books through various academic and popular presses. His research appears in popular outlets including International Magazine, Hampton Institute, and Black Agenda Report. He is the editorial team deputy coordinator of the International Manifesto Group, secretary of the Institute for 21st Century International Relations Incorporated, and currently volunteers as the organizational relations director of the Indianapolis Liberation Center. Thank you again for your time, your attention, and your dedication to journalistic integrity and separating fact from fiction and the just from the unjust. Without further ado, Derek R. Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Hall, and thank you to the press for coming to this very important and urgent conference of a case that has not gotten the attention that it deserves for over 2 decades. So as Mr. Hall mentioned, the primary reason that we're here is because in 2 days, Vernon T. Bateman has a court hearing in a paternity hearing in the matter of promise scales. Now, Vernon has never denied that he is the father of Promise. And in fact, in one of his many children's books, he actually dedicates the pages within to her. On June 24th, 2024, Vernon T. Bateman walked into the Indianapolis Liberation Center with a summons ordering him to appear at the Marion County Courthouse. It was delivered by the Marion County Prosecutor's Office, and it was in the matter Mr. Hall referred to before. Now, in the facts of the case that establish the basis for its proceeding, we see the following. This action is filed by Promise N. Scales, by friend and co-petitioner, Marion County Prosecutor's Office. Dorothy N. Scales is a child's mother. Promise N. Scales was conceived out of wedlock on or about May 2008 in the county of Hamilton, state of Indiana. At the time of conception and birth, Dorothy N. Scales was unmarried. Vernon T. Bateman is the father of said child. Vernon T. Bateman was born on January 8, 1980 in Cook County, Illinois. The child of this action requires and has required care and support. Dorothy N. Scales has provided the state that forms the basis of this petition, and this was submitted by Deputy Prosecutor Martha McDermott. There's a glaring and almost bewildering omission that the Marion County Prosecutor's Office failed to investigate. This glaring omission has to do with where Vernon T. Bateman was in the dates listed by the prosecutor's office. So in 1998 in Lake County, Vernon T. Bateman was erroneously convicted of 3 counts, 1 count of rape, 1 count of criminal deviant conduct, and 1 count of confinement, to which he was sentenced for 30 years, and 10 years. In other words, in 1998, Vernon T. Bateman was sentenced to at least 30 years in prison. In 2007 and 2008, Vernon T. Bateman was in the process of appealing his wrongful incarceration. On December 15th, 2008, the results of the appeal came in, which were also confounding and reaffirmed yet another instance of injustice against Mr. Bateman. However, this proves that Vernon T. Bateman was, at the times of conception and birth, a ward of the Indiana Department of Corrections, and Dorothy N. Scales was an employee of Aramark Correctional Facilities, which is the food service management company subcontracted by the IDOC. Not only was Vernon incarcerated, but he was held in isolation during this time. He was shackled and chained whenever he had an encounter with Dorothy N. Scales, who was in charge of his access to food. Under Indiana Code 3544.1-3-10, quote, a service provider who knowingly or intentionally engages in any fondling or touching with a person who is subject to lawful detention or lawful supervision commits sexual misconduct. The offense is a level 5 felony if the service provider engages in sexual intercourse with a person who is subject to lawful detention or lawful supervision. Scales violated that, as well as the IDOC's policy and procedures, which prohibit, quote, physical contact beyond that which is routinely required by specific job duties. And then in parentheses, sexual contact with an incarcerated individual is not only strictly prohibited, but is also a criminal offense and may be prosecuted, end quote. In other words, Vernon T. Bateman did not have the ability to consent to any act of sex with Dorothy N. Scales, which means that this is the child of a rape. For these reasons, we are calling on the Marion County Prosecutor's Office to immediately drop all of these charges, and we anticipate that there will be no court hearing on Thursday, February 13th. The most immediately related injustice concerns Vernon T. Bateman's release from prison in 2023. In June of that year, the IDOC released him from prison and transferred custody to Agent Cottey. His reporting instructions read, quote, "Immediately following your release, you must contact Agent Cottey via cell phone number 317-370-0701. Leave a message that includes your name, DOC number, and your approved address by your agent. You must report in person to the Indianapolis Parole District Office, followed by the location, on the very first Thursday following your release at 9 a.m. Do not change your address without prior approval from Agent Cottey. Failure to contact Agent Cottey will result in a violation and a warrant for your arrest." As instructed, Vernon replied to and initiated text and communications with the agent's cell phone. However, what followed was a disturbing series of text exchanges in which Agent Cottey not only sent messages that insinuated sexual advances towards Mr. Bateman, but also enticed him to break his parole stipulations by violating curfew. And you have all of these text messages, both the screenshots from the flip phone that Mr. Bateman is required to have because they refused to allow him access to the internet, as well as the transcriptions that we provided. So just to give you a sample, all right, this is Thursday at 9:44 p.m. This is Vernon T. Bateman, my new number. I have registered it tomorrow. Cottey, thanks, Vernon. Vernon replies, "You're welcome." Friday, 11:26 p.m. Cottey says, "Add apartment?" Vernon, "Yes." Cottey, "Okay." Vernon, "Thanks, have a good night." Later that night at 11:35 p.m., Cottey writes, "Did you move at your address?" Cottey replies, 448 Newport Court. Saturday, 12:09 a.m., so the same exchange. Saturday, 12:09 a.m., so this is part of the same communication. Vernon replies with his actual address. Cottey was referring to Cottey's address. Saturday, 1:05 a.m., Cottey says, "At apartment?" There's no reply from Vernon. 1:11 a.m., Cottey says, "Got it?" 1:15 a.m., Cottey says, "Is this your Andy?" By which he meant Addie, or address. At 1:19 a.m., Vernon replies, "Yeah." Saturday, 1:21 a.m., "If you need more time, let me know." Vernon replies at 1:26 a.m., "This is Vernon T. Bateman. My new address is," he proceeds to list it. Then Cottey, 1:37 a.m., "Coming on being." 2 minutes later, Vernon replies, "I don't understand." Saturday, 1:48 a.m., Vernon confirms, "My home visit is 6/21/23, right?" Cottey says, "Yes, sir." Vernon says, "Okay, please have a good night. Thanks again for checking on me." 1:51 a.m., Cottey replies, "Come to me." Vernon replies, "When?" Cottey says, "Now." This is at 1:53 a.m. Vernon replies, "How?" Cottey lists his address. Vernon replies, "I don't understand. I have a GPS on." Cottey replies, "Come over." "When?" Then he says, "Ready?" Vernon replies, "I don't understand. I have a GPS on my ankle." Cottey says, "What? To come over?" By which he meant want to come over. Then there's no reply until Cottey writes a couple minutes later, "Ready to come over?" Vernon again, "How?" "Want to come over." Right? "Okay, what do you want me to do?" Cottey, "Ready." This continues until Saturday at 3 a.m. when Vernon has stopped replying and Cottey repeatedly writes, "What's up? Come to me, sound me, what's up, and finally, what's up at 3 a.m. While Bateman eventually was reassigned a new parole agent, there were no punishment given to Agent Cottey. And in fact, he remained employed by the Indiana Department of Corrections throughout at least 2024, according to the information that we've obtained. He may still be employed today. What makes matters even worse and more disgusting is that in 2023, Agent Cottey was a parole officer who was also a sexual offense manager. In other words, he was specifically in charge of parolees convicted of sexual crimes, when this man himself was sexually harassing and assaulting, in our view, in the view of the Coalition to Free Vernon T. Bateman, sexual harassment and a sexual crime. Now, the reason that we highlight these two incidents is because they show a systematic and continuous effort, intentional or not, by individuals formerly and or currently employed by the IDOC to harass Vernon T. Bateman. Now, what's astounding to me as an individual and astounding to the community that supports Vernon is that throughout all of this hardship, while incarcerated, after incarceration, right, now that he's quote unquote free, which he is not, he still manages to do so much tremendous work. And in fact, I'd like to read one of the recent letters that Andre D. Carson wrote for Vernon. This is from November 25th, 2024. To whom it may concern, I am writing regarding Vernon T. Bateman, erroneously charged and convicted of rape at age 18. He was sentenced to 2 30-year sentences to be served consecutively. The alleged victim has since recanted her testimony, and she and her family have urged Mr. Bateman's release and exoneration. Mr. Bateman was released from prison in 2023 after serving 26 years, but he remains under punitively strict probation restrictions that severely limit his ability to work and make positive contributions to our community. Given the recanted testimony and other miscarriages of justice, a review of clemency for Mr. Bateman is appropriate. Sincerely, Andre Carson, Member of Congress. What are these restrictions he's referring to? Vernon T. Bateman is not allowed to be around any children. That's the reason that he is not here today. Because if the parole agents walked in and a community member came in with someone under the age of 18, or someone considered a child, they could violate him and they would send him immediately back to prison. Vernon had to obtain special permission to go to church. They have denied him access to mental health care because there could be children in the lobby. Meanwhile, they require him to get lie detector tests that he has to pay for. The Supreme Court of Indiana ruled in this matter that Bleaky, who was convicted of a crime against an adult, should not be subject to parole stipulations of someone convicted of a crime against a minor. So the parole conditions, they write, quote, were spelled out in a standardized form initially provided to him before his assignment to the Community Transition Program. These conditions, among other things, required Bleak to participate in and successfully complete a court-approved sex offender treatment program, the Indiana Sex Offender Management and Monitoring Program, otherwise known as SOMM, the same thing that Agent Cottey was in charge of. They found that this was unjust and unconstitutional. They write, quote, we agree with Bleak. None of the evidence presented at his individualized hearing or designated before the trial in support of or in opposition to his motion for summary judgment indicates that Bleak is, was, or will be a threat to children. The parole board's only evidence to the contrary apparently consisted of a general study of crossover offenders. So, in other words, this was in 2013, and today, in 2025, Vernon T. Bateman is still not allowed to interact with children. He cannot be around his own grandson. And we encourage you, please, read what we have presented to you and do your own research. We are sure that you will agree with us that based on these facts, this evidence, that the case against Bateman in the matter of the Paternity of Promise N scales should be vacated immediately, that Cottey should be fired and reprimanded for his offenses and his violations of the IDOC's own policies, that Bateman should be compensated for the suffering he endured at the hands of Dorothy N. Scales and Agent Cottey, not to mention the other 26 years, as well as that his parole stipulations be alleviated immediately. Thank you, and we'll now take questions.